In this section, we'll cover working with arrays. We'll create an example array to use for this section. We'll use an array of JavaScript objects since this is the most likely array type you'll see in development. Arrays with single values such as only strings and only numbers are not really seen very much in real development. Let's go to our container.js1 file. If you have not already done so, let's delete everything except an empty div. Let's create an array of 5 elements of JavaScript object, and let's give each object a property of ID, text, and number. Since we're working with React, this entire array will be one property of state called R1. The next thing we need to do is create a functional component to display each of our JavaScript objects. This functional component will essentially be a skeleton structure of how each element is displayed. You generally create this component in the functional directory, but for our demonstration we can just create it here. And we can leave it an empty div for now. The standard way to render a list of items in React is by iterating over each element and passing each element as an argument to our render list item component. In vanilla JavaScript, iterating over an item is done with the for loop. We're going to use modern ES5 syntax and just use a .map statement and an arrow function. So the .map function is a modern for loop. It iterates over the array and performs a function on each element. In the map function, we can use the arrow function and set the parameter to item. This item contains the JavaScript object we declared in R1. Before going over the solution, let's just console.log our item parameter and see what we get. And great, we can see that our map statement is doing exactly as intended. We're getting each element of the array printed to the console. Another thing you might find useful is we can easily access the index of any element. Simply pass in a second argument after the item keyword and wrap it in parentheses. You can call this index or I, but you can actually name it whatever you want. It just has to be the second argument. We can console.log index, and we indeed see the index of each item printed to the console. The map statement also has an optional third argument, which you can use to access the whole array. It's not used that much, but just something to be aware of. Now that we know how the .map statement works, we can use it to render a list of elements. Simply pass in render list item in the code block of the arrow function and pass each element as a prop. You can name the prop anything you want, but it's convention to name it the same as the parameter you set in the arrow function. Now, since we're passing each element in as a prop, we can simply just use it as a prop. Also, be sure to add the this keyword before render list item. This syntax may look weird, but it is valid. We can now go back to our render list item element and modify the code to work with our map statement. The entire JavaScript item object is contained in our props. As we saw in the last section, we can't directly render JavaScript objects. We have to set each property separately. So we can just access each property with props.item.text or whatever the name of the property you want to access. And we can do this all here in our functional component. If we save everything and go back to our browser, we can see that it is in fact working and rendering our list of items. If we look at our console, we do see an error that says each child in the iterator should have a unique key. In React, when you're rendering a list, you must explicitly set a unique key for each element as a prop. Setting a unique key is important because it allows the React Virtual DOM to keep track of what elements of the array have been changed, added, or removed. Your first thought would be to just make the index of every element the unique key, and this will make the error message disappear, but according to the official React docs, this will result in complex errors down the road and is not recommended. The unique key must be contained in the element itself. For our example, we can use the ID property. To set the unique key, we can pass it in as a prop to the render list item component. If you save everything and check your browser, you will see that it is working correctly and we're no longer getting the error. And this is it. We've correctly rendered a list of items.